Talk Show. Recorded live.
Hello and welcome to the Castle of Horror interview segment where we talk to writers and creators of today's genre world. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, creator of the Alex Van Helsing novels from HarperCollins. This week we're talking to author M.H. Boroson about his debut novel from Skyhorse Publishing, The Girl with the Ghost Eyes. M.H. Boroson, I keep wanting to call you M.H., and I'm pronouncing your last name correctly, is that right?
I don't think there's really a wrong way to pronounce it as long as people can spell it from the pronunciation.
All right. So M.H. Boroson was obsessed with two things as a young man, his bio says, Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Kung Fu movies. He studied Chinese religion at Naropa University and the University of Colorado, now lives in Denver, Colorado with his wife and three cats. The Girl with the Ghost Eyes, which is extremely exciting and very Buffy influenced, I think, is his first novel. So, welcome and say hello, Matthew.
Hello, Jason. I'm glad to be here tonight.
Oh, I'm really glad that you could join me. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Just to give people an idea of what kind of book this is, I'm going to quote directly from Publishers Weekly. Publishers Weekly says, debut novelist Boroson crafts a brilliant tale of magic, monsters, and kung fu in the San Francisco Chinatown of 1898. So this is the end of the 19th century. Shan Li-Lin is a Maotian priestess destined to fight monsters with paper talismans and her peachwood sword. When she is tricked and trapped in the spirit world, her father, who is a powerful priest, must make a terrible sacrifice to rescue her. So all these things that I've just mentioned, Kung Fu, Chinatown, Chinese names, Maoism, monsters, paper talismans, peachwood swords, all this would sound very familiar if you've watched a fair amount of I guess I'd call them wuxia movies, stuff like, Dragon Butterfly Sword, Close Adventures of the Spooky Kind, stuff like that. Is that the world that you're drawing on when you do these books?
Well, Close Encounters of the Spooky Kind, definitely. That's really the kind of thing that originally inspired it. I mean, the way Sammo Hung in that movie set out to reclaim traditional Chinese folklore and magic and go for something that is not just an imitation of universal monsters, but to really delve into his own culture, that started a trend that created its own subgenre. I translate the name of the subgenre as spirit magic kung fu movies. Spirit magic
kung fu.
Yeah.
Is that what you said?
And, yeah. And that is the genre that I decided to set the story in and against, pretty much, yes. Movies like Spooky Encounters, like Mr. Vampire, Magic Cop, all of these wonderful stories from the 80s and 90s that were being created in Hong Kong as the clock was ticking before the handover to China.
Yeah. Well, why did that happen? So if you could explain something to me, that'd be really great. So clearly, these movies, in theory, are drawing upon very old traditions, and I want to speak in a minute about this wonderful lecture that I heard you give in Denver. But these are ostensibly really old traditions, and yet, so why is Sammo Hung having to bring it to the universe in the early 80s? I mean, how come you hadn't? Why hadn't we seen hopping vampires and flying heads, before then in film, or had we? And it just wasn't well known.
We had. They weren't really well known. They hadn't really become a genre. I mean, there's a black and white movie called White Bone Demon Sword or something like that from maybe 1949, and there are the hopping vampires in there, but they're casual. They're on the side. They're not really the feature of the story, and to us, to you and me, if we had watched the movie before in the 1940s, we would have been like, "What the heck is that?" Because it's treated so casually. I mean, it's a big standard kung fu movie with warring clans and all of that, and just casually this woman walks past with her herd, of hopping corpses. They are very much under her control, and it's not treated like the feature of the story. It's just another piece of background that there is a woman with a herd of corpses.
Sure. In other words, it's a world. It's a world where magic is just a part of the daily drama. When I first encountered your book, which is new, you were giving a talk in Denver before you showed a couple of Hong Kong movies.
Yes.
I think you may have showed a Mr. Vampire and some other stuff. But before that, you gave a talk just about this kind of legend and this kind of movie and that the tradition that it was drawing on. And I would not spoil it, and I will not spoil it. But you even talked about why there was this legend of the hopping corpses in the first place and what it all means. And it was really amazing to me because I love this point where you're explaining that the hopping corpses, they move through the cities and people don't want to look straight at them, and there's all this folklore. And then you stop at some moment and you go, now, am I to understand that you guys are sitting there thinking, does this guy really believe that there were hopping corpses? and it was really cool. And then you twisted and you gave sort of the source of the legend itself, and it's really neat. I was wondering, I guess I'd like you to comment a little bit about what it's like to be fascinated with a particular subject and then figure out a way to take all of that stuff, and figure out a way to turn it into a novel that runs under 300 pages. I mean, to take all that and then to slowly start to turn it into something that you can bind and sell.
Well, you have really caught on to something there, because, I mean, this was the moment that I had the inspiration. And I have not been a novelist my whole life. I'm in my 40s now. And, I used to write poems for fun, and I used to write essays and things along those lines, but I really didn't feel the call to write fiction until I had this idea. And once I had the idea, I realized that there was a way to sort of combine every single thing I had ever loved. I mean, not every single thing. I mean, there's people who aren't in there, but to take all the movies I had loved and all of the books and all of the subject matter and the folklore and everything that I had learned in decades of studying this stuff and synthesize it into something that would be created and new and mine and yet belonging to the world. And that was a huge, huge moment. And I had no idea how to do it. So I spent 2 years doing nothing but research, and I mean nothing, since I was recovering from abdominal surgery. And I couldn't really get out of bed most of the time, so I would do research for this story from morning till night. And I
think you'd wind up with a lot more than you can use in an actual novel.
Yes, there is that, and then there's also the fact that it's the first in a series. But
right. Right. So you can. I mean, just reading the Girl with the Ghost Eyes, it's extraordinarily dense. I mean, the moment that our main character goes, into the spirit world, and much of the action takes place in this world that is a sort of a shade version of our world. It has the same corners and the same streets, but the light is different, and it's peopled with spirits that are invisible otherwise. And you've got so much information packed in here. There's a point where she stumbles across this. I don't even know how to describe it. This ghostly horde or this magical parade of spirits, and you're just nonstop. You're just throwing out all of these crazy creatures that are making their way down. A creature that is nothing but a human head the size of, it appears to me to be the size of a refrigerator, and turned upside down and walking down the street, and another creature that is an eyeball with like little muscular legs that walks, but and all of these, it's and you can tell that you've read a hell of a lot in this world, and that's, I mean, think of it this way. Imagine if you had spent instead all of that time studying, I don't know, medieval, like Arthurian legend. What you would have wound up with still probably may well have been a fantasy story that seemed an awful lot like the fantasies that we're kind of accustomed to, the sword and sorcery that we most often encounter. But because yours is focusing on this kind of like Chinese stuff, this Sammo Hung universe, basically, you've got, a very fresh setting for what is still, in the end, a Buffy the Vampire Slayer-esque kind of adventure.
Yes, very much so. Well, I mean, that is essentially what Tolkien did in the creating of many of the genre tropes that we're familiar with. I mean, he was a tremendous scholar of languages and lores from Europe. He synthesized deep knowledge of Scandinavian and Norse and all kinds of material that he had absorbed over a period of decades to create something which was simultaneously completely new and as old as the hills.
What strikes me about Tolkien, though, honestly, is there's a degree of modernity and cynicism in the voice that I didn't expect. When I went back and read it, I realized, oh, this is a 20th century writer. There's you kind of imagine, because of the high-flown language of the characters, that this will actually read like an old book, but actually it doesn't. It reads like a modern book, and sometimes it has like this sort of nastiness, and that's nothing. Not saying anything negative about Tolkien, but it has a sort of cynical nastiness, especially when he's dealing with like courtly intrigue and stuff like that, that comes from the fact that he's he's very, very much a modern writer. So yeah, but I mean, he's hiding it under this wonderful veneer of like deeply researched material, all that Scandinavian lore and all that stuff. What was it? I believe it was in there's a, when they're going into like the castle of the steward. All the castle intrigue sounded basically like faculty nastiness. It was fun. But so tell me a little bit about your process. I mean, like how long did it take you to write this? After you spent 2 years researching, so how long did it take you to actually write this book?
Well, when I first set out to write it, I discovered very quickly that I didn't know how to write fiction. So I spent a lot of time learning that before anything really got underway.
What did you read to learn to write fiction?
I read a lot of manuals and things, and I read a lot of fiction and sort of tried to figure out how it was different from essays and how it was different from journalism. And that one of the hardest things for me... I imagine it can be very humbling, right? Because you've been writing for a long time. Now you're starting a new thing. It's like taking on a new instrument. And, well, one example that I use is something that I read in a newspaper article from Boulder around 20 years ago. And I'm going to tell it to you first like fiction. That the security guards at Target were alerted that a man had burst into the store and was running at breakneck speed. So they immediately started paying a lot of attention to this guy. And he grabbed a cooler and he grabbed some 20 pounds of ice and he ran out of the store without paying for it. And the security guards started running after him immediately. I don't know how they're armed at Target. I mean, maybe clubs or something, maybe not even that. But they are sprinting after this guy who has just run into their store and stolen a cooler and some 20 pounds of ice. And they run after him into the parking lot, and he is running towards where a car accident has taken place. The security guards see that there is a human arm lying severed in the parking lot. And this man has stolen the cooler in order to save this guy's arm. But as a journalistic article, it says, it starts by telling you not the story, but the outcome of the story.
Sure.
It says man steals ice in order to save arm or something like that.
Right.
I mean, the point of the fiction is to bring it alive from moment to moment.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that things happen chronologically in the mind of the reader as they happen in the story.
And to reveal things organically, you know, in the way that makes for good storytelling, you know, and yeah.
And that was a difficult adjustment for me to make, having written some journalism and a lot of essays over my life, to start seeing the prose as something that is supposed to happen in real time in the reader's mind, rather than something that communicates the necessary information first and then fills in details.
You're right. It's a totally different set of muscles. You know, knowing when to cut from scene to scene, you know, and when to skip, and when to like zoom out and sort of speed the characters along to the next scene, or to zoom in and join that real time that you mentioned. You know, because no book is. I've seen a few experiments. I've seen Dean Koontz, for instance, experiment with telling an entire book in real time, more or less. You know, where there are like essentially no cuts, but it's really rare. So okay, so you're reading books about writing, and by the way, I love those. I mean, I am always interested in reading somebody else's advice on how to write, even though it's contradictory. I find it very interesting to take in all these different I don't know, opinions. Did you try Stephen King's On Writing? Is that a book that you hit upon?
I did, and I mean, there are some things in it that really resonate with me, like where he speaks about the importance of continuously reading other writers' work.
Yeah.
Learning.
He goes, may I be frank, if you don't have time to read, you don't have time to write. Yeah.
Something like that. But I mean, he talked specifically about how it worked for him, how he would read this person and would be influenced, and it really, you know, it was different from and yet related to sort of T.S. Eliot's anxiety of influence, you know, the notion of writers engaging with the writers of the past, because he wasn't even talking about the past. He was sharing something that just seemed, King's descriptions of writers influencing each other seemed like this living system of people, and it just was just so compelling, and it really helped me develop a deeper relationship to my reading.
Yeah. I always feel more inspired to do a lot more reading after picking up, you know, his memoir. That is just one of the best books on writing I've ever come across, and I've been really impressed with it. So, okay, so you're reading books on writing, but did you outline the whole story that you did, or did you just sort of start, or where were you?
Well, I did outline the whole story.
Using what? Excel, or just like bullets on a Word document, or what?
Well, I mean, I didn't entirely keep to the outline that I had started with, but
sure.
I had a 6-foot length of butcher block, which I kept rolled up in a poster mailer, and I had, you know, written down different events that were going to occur at different times, and it was difficult. I mean, the things that turn out to be challenges are not things that non-writers would realize are challenges, and keeping track.
What do you mean by that?
Well, keeping track of where the minor characters are going to be, you know, realizing that, you know, the villains couldn't possibly have accomplished step A, B, C, and D, while the hero was only accomplishing one step, and realizing that I had to redo the plotting because, you know, there were too many things happening behind the scenes that just didn't logically make sense.
Yeah.
And the huge piece of paper really helped me work out sort of the cause and effect relationships.
So did you follow I get the idea of like starting out with this long list of things that you want to happen, but did you follow a structure once you were putting it together, like a notion of Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, or
Yeah. I mean, the whole dramatic structure thing. I mean, that comes to us via Shakespeare and Aeschylus and Sophocles. I mean, it's classical and it's wonderful, and I'm always seeing it put down by people who look down on it because so many popular novels use it. But it's been around for thousands of years for a reason. And while Aristotle's purposes of drama were not the same, I mean, his notion of drama was not escapism. It wasn't fun. It was about creating religious experiences. But nonetheless, his notions of catharsis, his notions of dramatic flaws, I mean, all of these things have continued to shape our stories because they are so rich and resonant still. And I did work from essentially a 3-act structure. I mean, I didn't want, I was basically going to be bombarding people with folklore that was unfamiliar to them. Yeah. And I wanted to give it a very familiar structure to work within, so that they weren't struggling on 10 different levels to follow what was happening. So, I mean, it's a young woman discovers that the young woman faces challenges that she was not prepared for. These challenges destabilize her world, and she has to find strengths within herself in order to face those challenges. And in finding those strengths, she learns about her family, about herself, about the world all around her. I mean, it's a very classical coming-of-age structure. It's a very classical Aristotelian structure. It's a classical popular novel structure. And
absolutely. I mean, I kind of feel like that 3-act structure that I think we sort of, our brains react to it well. Somehow the idea of following a path and then there's a turn and we follow the path and you kind of picture, like you're on a toboggan that just sort of bumps against the side of a track and then smoothly keeps going. It just works. It works when you know you've made the final turn moving towards the end. Well, okay, let me change tacks. What's you go out of your way to mention Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and I'd say your main character is like a mixture of Buffy and Doctor Strange in a way. It's like a Chinese Doctor Strange. But because all of these talents are mystical talents. But what does Buffy have to teach you about writing a book? I mean, I think I have some guesses, but I'd love to hear what you're thinking.
Well, when I first discovered Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I was very much a hoity-toity and pretentious young man. And I read literature. I didn't have time for escapism or comic books or anything along those lines. I mean, if it wasn't deep and meaningful and important, then it seemed like a waste to me. So when I discovered Buffy and I realized that it wasn't this either-or situation, that it wasn't zero-sum, that you could have something that was both meaningful literature and fun escapism. It was a huge moment in my life, and it changed the way I view pretty much everything ever since. I like fun. Fun is fun. Fun is good.
Yeah.
And just because something is fun doesn't mean it's any less profound or any less revolutionary. And Joss Whedon is very much into his Shakespeare. He's very much into the tragedy and the comedy of everything. And he used these Shakespearean methods of tragedy to tell the story of a young woman kicking monster butt. And
yes.
I'd never imagined such a thing until I came across Buffy. So yes, it's instrumental in shaping my sense of what a story can be. It can be fun and kick-ass and still have depth and emotion. And Yeah.
There was so much to learn from. I remember on that show, like before Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the only example I could think of adventures where you had that many sort of characters engaged and with following their own stories and like the twistiness of it would be like soap operas and Chris Claremont's X-Men, because Whedon managed to bring in, these very serious ideas, but also these like soap opera notions, like the constantly having the characters shifting, like allegiances and so forth, and just funny. That was a sort of remarkable work. Very cool. No, I love the idea that there's a whole generation of writers who because Buffy came around at an important part in our childhood or our adulthood, that it's you can't help but have it influence your writing. I think that's true. I mean, I think it's there in mine. I think just like nobody can write anything political nowadays without being influenced by Aaron Sorkin. Whether you want to be influenced by Aaron Sorkin or not, I think it's impossible to get away from that guy.
Sorkin was another. That's a lot of Shakespearean background. But yeah.
Oh, absolutely. No, he's obsessed with mixing it up, with mentioning Shakespeare and also mentioning Mary Poppins and sort of,
yes.
Playing with your expectations of how sophisticated he's going to go. Yes. So, all right. So, my last question about process, because you intend this book as the first of a series, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, are you already working on the second one?
Yes, I am.
All right.
The working title for it is The Girl with No Face.
Okay.
You can interpret that as you will. But go on.
So my question is, like, how if you decide I'm working on this book, okay, when is it due? Well, like, when do you have to have this thing done by?
Well, I'd like to have this be one of those series where there's a new book every year, so people can look forward to the next one. And I mean, I don't have a contract for the second book yet, so everything is up in the air.
Spec. But no, I know exactly where you're coming from. I mean, so my point is, if you're trying to finish a book, and this book is like 300 pages long, I assume the next one will probably be the same, maybe a little bit longer, maybe not. But you want to do these 300 pages. How much do you try to get? Do you have this? Are you one of these people who are like, I try to get X number of pages or X number of words per week, or do you even have any inkling like that?
Well, I do. I mean, it doesn't really matter at the end of the month because I have a lot less words than I wrote during the month. I mean, I wind up throwing away a lot of days' work, which I think everyone does. I mean, I hear people say that they set, 1,200 words a day limit or a goal. And I'm like, well, if you do that, you're going to be writing 500,000 words a year. I mean, you're talking 8 novels or something. And I don't think very many people are keeping most of the words that they write. It must be.
And I'm always intimidated by well, I know, like Stephen King says that he tries to do 2,000 words a day. Do you write every day, or do you try to do a certain number of sessions per week, or do you just let it flow?
I do try to write every day. I'm not as consistently good about it as I would like. I've become, unfortunately, dependent on the outdoors, and here in Colorado, it's not that easy to write outdoors on certain days when it's
snowy. You mean like at a park bench or like a picnic table kind of thing?
Well, I have a state park pass and a national park pass and botanical gardens. And, I mean, I wrote the entire first book at the botanical gardens. I would take my laptop out and I would write until the battery died 4.5 hours later. And then I would go home. And that's how I wrote the entire first book. I no longer live so close to the Botanic Gardens that I can just roll out of bed and go over the way I would have. Yeah, I mean, I find it preferable to sit outdoors. The great thing about it is that, I mean, if you ever get stuck, you just hibernate your laptop and you walk around for 10 minutes and then sit down and start writing again.
Sure. No, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean,
Can you write at home, or do you find it's difficult to write in your house?
I can write at home. I mean, to be a professional, one can't allow things to be so conditional.
Sure.
If one wants to be a professional writer, you can't say, I'm only going to write on days when the weather is good.
Well, but Starbucks is open even when the weather is not good. I mean, there's always that. I have a really hard time writing in my house. I mean, it's tough. Somehow there's something, the need to get in a car and go to a separate place becomes really important. Maybe that's not fair, but that's definitely how I feel. Well, very cool. All right. Well, when do you expect to have I know that you haven't set it up yet, but when do you expect to have the new book finished?
I am not going to commit to anything along those lines.
Well, very cool. Okay, so the current book, anyway, the one that everybody loves, and it's been getting fantastic reviews, Publishers Weekly, a bunch of others that I've seen go up. The book is called The Girl with Ghost Eyes. If you dig Buffy the Vampire Slayer and you dig mysticism and you're curious about Chinese folklore, this book has all of that, and I really, really recommend it. And it's fascinating, and I just kind of feel like you could probably publish a Silmarillion to go with it that just sort of touched on everything that you learned along the way. So, Matthew, thank you so much for spending time with us, and
thank you, Jason.
I hope to get a chance to talk to you again really soon, and I can't wait to read the next one. Have a fantastic week, actually.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for the invitation, Jason.
Absolutely. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, great. Bye now.